Future unclear for Sydney dogs and cats home shelter after government funding request denied. Every week hundreds of people are calling the Sydney Dogs and Cats Home Animal Shelter to surrender their pets. Key points: shelters are reporting a surge in pet surrenders. One of the largest animal shelters in Sydney had a request for government funding knocked back. A spokesperson for the local government minister says the state provided $500,000 for the shelter's rehoming services. To stay up to date with latest top stories, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking the button above this video. The shelter says the reported surge in surrenders is putting pressure on the services they provide in 8 different councils in the city. General Manager Melissa Penn says this is happening because of the cost of living crisis and workers returning to the office after a growth in pet ownership during the pandemic. They're turning to sort of normal life and needing to surrender their animals or animals are getting lost, Ms. Penn told ABC Radio Sydney presenter James Valentine. There's just a huge amount of animals requiring care at the moment. A report from Animal Medicines Australia suggested a substantial increase in the number of pets between 2019 and 2021. Animal Welfare League NSW says it has an 8-month waiting list for surrendering pets. This is now not a temporary phenomenon. It's something that we expect to be occurring regularly over the next 3 to 5 years, Chief Executive Stephen Albin said. RSPCA-NSW said there had been slight decrease in the number of surrenders compared to the past couple of years. However, owners not being able to afford care was the second highest reason for surrendering their pets. Funding for a new facility refused. Sydney Dogs and Cats Home operated out of Carlton for 77 years before being evicted earlier this year. It is working out of temporary facilities in Strathfield and Austral in the meantime, but needs a new purpose-built facility to keep up with demand. The shelter was provided with a site on Crown land at Kurnell in 2018 on a 50-year peppercorn lease, but the site is undeveloped and needs to have a facility built on it. At the moment shelters are overflowing with animals, Ms. Penn said. Ms. Penn says they asked the state government to fund just over half of the cost of the building but was refused. We've requested 60% of the funding and we'll raise the rest, Ms. Penn said. Unfortunately, they knocked us back this year and said there's no money in the budget to fund it. A spokesperson for State Minister for Local Government Wendy Tuckerman said $500,000 was allocated in the budget for the shelter in response to their request. Ultimately, funding the development of a new facility on the site provided by the government is a matter for Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. NSW opposition leader Chris Minns has thrown his support behind the shelter. There's got to be a way through this for this important Sydney institution. An uncertain future for shelters. Animal shelters need to look at alternative operating models because they are an expensive business, Animal Welfare League NSW CEO Stephen Albin says. At their league's shelters, keeping a dog for a year costs $5,200 a year and a cat costs about $2,900. Fundraising is also becoming more difficult for animal shelters amid the rising cost of living. The only sustainable way for shelters is to grow your foster network and volunteer network and really get the community behind you to help house a significantly larger number of animals, Mr. Albin said. Melissa Penn says they are confident they can raise a lot of the funds from their community but need the injection of cash from the government.